and welcome to my internship presentation for Siemens. Last semester, I had the pleasure to work at Siemens for 5 months in their headquarters in Lisbon. I worked within the advanced analytics team, whose main responsibilities are to create digital solutions which use all kinds of innovative technologies. They're also customer oriented, so as much as possible, we try to co-develop these solutions with our clients to solve their business challenges. My role as a cloud architect was essentially to create and maintain a stable digital landscape for all the different departments under the GBS platform and continuously improve all kinds of processes and security measures within them. I also learned quite a few valuable skills, which are not limited to this list. There's many more that you will refine as a cloud architect. Continuous integration was used by the team to essentially ensure that all developers' working copies are merged to a shared mainline. This was all done using GitLab. As you can see, we also use continuous delivery, so that we also ensure that when we're developing our solutions, that the software is released at any time. And there are many benefits for using CI/CD, but I won't go into too much depth into them now. And AWS is the main service provider we use for our cloud services. It is the biggest and the most practical, has the most documentation. There's many reasons why AWS is the way to go when creating cloud web services. So this is the main one that we used in my time there. And I won't go too much depth into the theory of the cloud, but here are some of the main benefits of it. There's a lot of disadvantages too, which is what our team is usually trying to tackle. We try to make those disadvantages go away, essentially. So the main challenge we have is the costs of these AWS services. So there's a lot of reasons why these costs are so high. These are the main ones. And here you can see that there are different factors when it comes into pricing for AWS. It takes into consideration memory, CPU power, bandwidth, network latency, and all these other factors which are difficult to calculate at times. And that's why AWS is quite practical in that sense, because it offers a pay-as-you-go system. And so this is basically made up of the networking costs, the computing costs, and the storage costs. So this all factors into the final billing. Now I'm going to show kind of how I would approach designing a solution, and this is kind of how we were taught to do it. A customer, so here we take an example of a customer who needs to ingest data that also needs to be aggregated and presented in management reports in Tableau. And Tableau is an AWS service for kind of monitoring and analyzing things. So how this is also kind of a roadmap of how we would approach a solution, or say let's say the life cycle. So we start with initial requirements, and then we start producing a proof of concept. And once this is validated, we start building a solution. And then once this is done, we start testing, and then we deploy. So if we go into this example into a bit more detail, so say with the customer needs to ingest 1 GB of data per day, and then this is all divided into 10 files. And these 10 files are aggregated every night and presented in management reports in Tableau. So here we can already identify a few use cases. And this is kind of, so first of all, we have to create some sort of Lambda function, and this function would be responsible for compiling these files and the data from the user. Then we would need to have some kind of way to schedule this. So we would use SQS service, which is a queuing service. This way we can kind of schedule these lambdas to operate every day at 12 a.m. And we use these glue jobs, and these glue jobs are very useful because they encapsulate a script that can connect to your source data, which will process it and execute all kind of ETL processes on that data. So here we're aggregating it, putting it into staging bucket, which is then used finally by our Lambda function. and then it is inserted into the Snowflake database. So here are some of the projects that I worked on. These are the main ones, the biggest ones. So we had the level of authority service for approving signature requests, a credential rotation tool for rotating IAM users and their keys, as well as job flows, which I'm going to go into detail in the next slides, as well as FD IDM, which is an OCR mining tools where we would take PDFs and then we would convert them into CSVs with all the relevant data. So job flows is one of the bigger internal tools that we worked on, and it's for compositing and executing complex data workflows. And we made this serverless service, so it doesn't have a very high running cost, and it mainly uses step functions and event bridge to schedule Lambda events. And the context for this is that we are in a massive multi-user, multi-project environment within advanced analytics. So we need to have some kind of standardized way to orchestrate access to data pipelines through Snowflake and all other kinds of things. And this is kind of the front end. This was developed by one of our UI UX developers. This is essentially the web console, connected to the web console. And my main contribution for this project in particular was working on the backend API. So this essentially was a REST API, which was using a fast API. And it was essentially for exposing all the different actions for the API, such as creating and updating, as well as starting and configuring DAGs. And DAGs are just directed acyclic graphs, so they contain information about the different users and their tasks. And yeah, this was also deployed in AWS Lambda. So this is kind of how we would deploy an API typically. And I was doing backend APIs for some of these other tools, such as the FD IDM, as well as the level of authority. So I was responsible mainly for the backend parts of these projects. So thank you for listening, and I hope that if you're ever considering Siemens, that you go for it, because it really is a great learning experience and a great way to get your foot in the door, especially in the cloud industry.